Okay. What I was saying is why the USSR government collapsed in on itself. So yeah, when you structure your state in such a hierarchical manner where the rulers have all the say and can decide who gets to replace them, because again, that's how vanguardism works.
Yeah, vanguardism can jump in a lake.
Yeah, vanguardism sucks, but we kind of have to explain it because for those who don't know.
Oh yeah, sorry.
Yeah, so vanguardism is basically this idea that there should be a professional clique of professional revolutionaries who, by the virtue of their position as the ones in charge of the party, naturally know better than the rest of the workers and the members of the party, and as a result, they should be allowed to make all the decisions for everyone else.
They sort of are like if soldiers and the academia had a baby.
Yeah, pretty much. Or to be more, or the way I put it, they're basically technocratic neoliberals in red paint. Yeah, the workers can't be trusted to govern themselves, so instead we're going to make all the decisions for them. And you can see that because many publications in the United States, especially liberal ones, have started to publish editorial pieces along the lines of there's too much democracy, populism is bad. If the people make decisions, they make the bad decisions. So therefore, parties should be structured in a way that, ironically, is the same as the USSR's Communist Party, where the DNC makes all the decisions, where the unelected DNC decides who gets to be the presidential nominee and the congressional and senatorial nominees, and
This is in response to Bernie having gotten so close, I bet.
Yeah, and also Trump to a lesser degree, but mostly Bernie.
Well, the DNC wouldn't care about Trump, would it?
I mean, no, but the point is these liberal editorials are like the Republicans and Democrats should.
The liberal editorials will be talking about Trump. They will point to him as an example.
Yeah. But yeah, they're basically like the part there. There's too much democratic control, but there's too much democracy within the party. The founding fathers didn't intend for there to be political primaries like that. Just complete elitist bullshit. That's basically like.
And as we all know, we want to go by what the founding fathers said. All bajillion of them being slave owners.
Yeah, except for Thomas Paine, I think. He was the only one who wasn't.
I think there was 6 in total that didn't have slaves when they died.
Yeah. Can you imagine the alternate history where Thomas Paine became the first president of the United States?
Oh.
I mean, it probably wouldn't have been much better, but there's a slight possibility that he would have done something about slavery, maybe. Because again, he was a very radical Republican. He wasn't just, let's have a republic, because at least that way we don't have to listen to the king.
But yeah. So vanguards, they suck.
Yeah, they suck, and they're an integral part of Marxist-Leninist ideology. Basically, the Leninist thought is we have to do things the way they are, because otherwise the revolution can't succeed. And to back up their arguments, they point to the fact that there are plenty of non-Marxist-Leninist revolutions which failed. Like, for example, the German Revolution of 1919, the Spartacist uprising, which didn't work because it was brutally suppressed. And then a few months later, the Bavarian Socialist Republic rose up against the Weimar Republic, but that too was suppressed. They also point to the Spanish Civil War and the anarchist uprisings in Catalonia and
where they betrayed us. Sorry.
No, you're absolutely correct. They did turn that because the Spanish communists did indeed turn on the anarchists. And the revolution failed predominantly because, well, the Spanish communists decided, nope, you weren't going to succeed anyway, so we might as well turn on you to suppress you so we can go back to kicking the crap out of the nationalists, even though most of the nationalist ass-kicking was actually done by the anarchists in the Civil War. And they were much better organized than the Republican Army.
Oopsie.
Yeah, the anarchists were actually much better organized than the Republican Army was during the Spanish Civil War. And it was, in fact, the fact that the Republicans and the anarchists, well, the Republicans turned on the anarchists, that the anarchists ended up, war effort ended up collapsing on itself, and they got pretty much curb stomped.
Yeah, I mean, I am for unified left stuff, but if you can't trust a group, then what the fuck?
Yeah, if you can't trust Marxist-Leninists not to immediately turn on you once they seize state power, then there is no way any sort of left unity is possible in any practical terms. And it's especially not possible because Marxist-Leninist ideology is very atomized and sectarian, not just in its refusal to associate with other revolutionary socialist ideologies like Trotskyism, left communism, classical or orthodox Marxism, or even democratic socialism, social democracy, anarcho-communism. Just name a leftist ideology, and they refuse to have anything to do with it. Unless, of course, things are absolutely dire, and they have to stick themselves in a popular front in order to prevent fascist takeover, like, again, Spain and France did that, and it worked to an extent, but not quite. But yeah, it's not just that they refuse to associate with other ideologies, they refuse to associate with other Marxist-Leninist parties. And Trotskyism is even worse in that respect, and Trotskyism is basically just Marxist-Leninism with a different coat of paint on it. Because, again, when you have this mentality that the leader knows best, then any competing vanguard is automatically seen as wrong. That they have the wrong interpretation, they have the wrong ideas, they have the wrong mindset, the wrong mentality. They're revisionists, they're deviationists, they're counter-revolutionists. They're not the real vanguard. We're the real vanguard. So that's how you end up with, and only that, but because of the way the party is structured, there will always be a party establishment and a party outliers. And if the outliers decide that their interpretation of Marxist-Leninism is the correct one, and there's no way they can take over the establishment of the party, the Central Committee and the Politburo, then they're just going to split off and form their own communist party, in which they are the establishment. But as they grow in number, they acquire their own version of the outliers, who then decide that they know better than the establishment, and the process continues repeating itself into infinity, which is why you end up with a nation having like 10 different Marxist-Leninist and Trotskyist political parties, even though they all claim to have the exact same political ideology.
Oh, that's right. It's that old Trotskyist joke. What do you get when you put 3 Trotskyists in a room? 5 parties.
Yeah, it's where the Monty Python's Life of Brian People's Front of Judea joke comes from.
Oh.
Yeah, Monty Python are the best at lampooning the far left, in my opinion, which is amazing because they're all a bunch of middle-class Oxbridge liberals, but somehow they understand how the far left works better than most other liberals. So, but yeah, the People's Front of Judea versus the Judean People's Front. They want the same thing, but they hate each other because I don't know. But yeah, I looked up the Wikipedia article on leftist internationals, and I shit you not, there are 20 Marxist-Leninists, Leninist, and Trotskyist internationals, and about 10 of them claim to be the Fourth International. No, I'm not kidding. I'm going to look it up right now.
No.
International.
Front of Judea's people.
Yeah. Okay. So. So the Trotskyist internationals include the Committee for a Workers' International, the Coordinating Committee for the Refoundation of the Fourth International, just the plain old Fourth International, the International Committee of the Fourth International, the International Committee League, earlier known as the International Spartacist Tendency. Okay, that's not a Fourth International. The International Communist Union, the International Marxist Tendency, the International Revolutionary Left, the International Socialist Alternative, the International Socialist Tendency, the International Workers League, the International Workers Unity Fourth International, the League of the Fourth International, the League of the Fifth International, because they decided, okay, the Fourth International's taken, let's just skip to the Fifth International. And Trotskyist fraction the Fourth International, as if the other Fourth Internationals aren't Trotskyists, apparently. And lastly, the Workers' International to rebuild the Fourth International. And those are just the ones that Wikipedia knows about. There's no way to know how many other obscure Fourth Internationals exist. There are just like 10 guys in some random community center in London or Berlin or something. Compare that to the list of anarchist political internationals, which is just two: the International Anarchist Federations and the International Workers Association. And also, apparently, the International Anarchist Federations have a Bulgarian chapter, which I didn't know about. Should look them up the next time I'm in Bulgaria. Maybe. I'll think about it.
Don't they
But
also
yeah,
work together, those two different anarchist groups?
yeah, I believe. Yeah, they most I'm pretty sure they do, because unlike Trotskyists, they don't think they're automatically better than everyone else, so therefore they are much more willing to talk to each other. But in the end of the day, it kind of showcases why vanguardism and Marxist-Leninism kind of doesn't work, because the Russian Revolution did not succeed because of democratic centralism and vanguardism. It worked because the workers were acting on their own initiative, and they were performing revolutionary activity which furthered the revolutionary cause of, well, the revolution. And by the time and it worked, obviously, because they overthrew the Kerensky government after the Kerensky government overthrew the monarchy. But after it worked, the Bolsheviks were like, okay, this is the part where democratic centralism gets enforced for real this time. And the reason why contemporary Marxist-Leninist and Trotskyist parties don't accomplish anything of note is because, not just because they're too small to actually do anything, but the reason why they're so small is because, again, their structure prevents their membership from getting too big. Because the bigger the party is, the more ideologically diverse its membership will be, by nature, by default. And ideological diversity is anathema to the vanguard, so you can't have that. So therefore, whenever there's enough outliers within a political party, they'll just split off and form their own political party, and that's how we end up with a dozen different Trotskyist and Marxist-Leninist parties, even though they're all should logically be one giant party that works together to facilitate a revolution.
But don't be redonkulous.
Also, apparently there was a fascist international.
Oh, that doesn't... I don't understand. I'm sorry.
Yeah, apparently Benito Mussolini organized international fascist political parties. And apparently they had political party members in Greece, Romania, Lithuania, Norway, Denmark, Ireland, France, Spain, Portugal, Belgium, and the Netherlands.
Mm.
I mean, it was only one conference it was only like one conference, so it didn't really amount to much, but...
And then they immediately realized that they hate other ethnicities.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, there's no way the Italian fascists and Greek fascists did not instantly hate each other. Like, there's no way. Especially after Italy invaded Greece and then got completely kicked out of Greece for being shit at fighting. Italy. You're always going to be remembered as the weakest Axis member, which is hilarious to me.
I like Italy, not the country, but the people.
Yeah. I've been to Italy. Yeah, I've been to
terrible
Italy.
Driving.
Yeah, I've actually been to Italy for about. I mean, it was part of this massive road trip from the UK to Bulgaria and back to the UK again. So we went from London through Frankfurt, Budapest, and Yeah, I think it was Frankfurt, Budapest, and then we just beelined it straight for Bulgaria and my hometown. Then from my hometown, we went to Plovdiv, which is one of the bigger cities in Bulgaria. Then I don't remember the capital of Croatia. No, I don't think it was Croatia. I think it was Slovenia. I don't remember the name of the city, unfortunately, because I'm a terrible person who doesn't remember where he's been. And on our way back, we visited Venice.
Oh, nice.
I mean, it's overrated in my opinion. I mean,
No, yeah.
a city. Venice is basically a city-sized tourist trap, in my opinion.
Wait, is Venice not the one that has the good ice cream?
I think it's Florence, actually.
I'm sorry.
I mean, I haven't been to Florence. Maybe I should visit Italy again. Maybe I will.
Eat all the right
As soon as I find my passport, which I lost, but whatever. So yeah, getting back on topic. Getting back on topic. Marxist-Leninism, it didn't just squander a pretty big opportunity to challenge the global hegemony of capitalism. It is also very much a blueprint for how not to do a revolution and how a revolution isn't actually possible to achieve with a Marxist-Leninist ideology and methods.
Yeah. It chose, in the end, it chose privilege over altruism, I think.
Yeah. And I absolutely find it insulting for Parenti to say, oh, look at all the great things the Lenin and Stalin and Mao and Castro and Ho Chi Minh did. Yeah, okay. An authoritarian social democracy is still not socialism, in my opinion, because that's the most charitable way to describe any of the Marxist-Leninist states. Social democracy with authoritarianism. Social democracy with a command economy.
Yeah,
that's what it is. You have a functioning welfare
if
state.
you want to acknowledge what capitalism did right, hello?
I'm not listening. Yes. Hello. Yep. I'm listening. Yep.
Sorry. If you want to acknowledge what communism did right, then you have to acknowledge what capitalism did right. And quite frankly, both of those things sound like trash garbage to me.
Yeah. It's basically apologism. We did good things, so therefore we're good enough. It's been, and one thing that, and speaking of apologism, one recurring element of Marxist-Leninists' apologism for the USSR and its authoritarianism is, well, the leaders, they had no control over the material conditions of the state, and when bad things happen, it's because of the capitalist encirclement. They didn't have enough resources. The capitalists route to get them. They had to do things this way. Blah blah blah. But when good things happen in the USSR, no, it's entirely because of the ideology. It's entirely because the ideology is 100% accurate all the damn time. So therefore, if you follow it, you get good things happening. Yeah, they're willing to they're willing to attribute to themselves all the good things about the Soviet Union and the Eastern Bloc, like the elimination of illiteracy, the improvements in healthcare, the improvements in nutrition, the improvements in education, the improvements in there were improvements. There's no denying that. Things did get better relative to in Russia relative to the feudal monarchism that preceded it, but that's not really a high bar to clear, to be honest. And it's one that capitalism managed to clear on its own without a revolution. So yeah, it's not this colossally amazing achievement that Leninists pretended it is, because if it happened, because again, it's something that happened in capitalist nations too, when social democratic governments were in charge. It didn't happen.
Yeah,
It didn't happen quite to the same degree, and Western welfare states weren't exactly as good as the ones in the Soviet Union, allegedly. But again, this is basically what Christian creationists employ to defend the biblical depiction of God.
yeah.
Whenever something bad happens, it's because of Satan or because of sin or because of wickedness or because of the gays if you're feeling especially homophobic. But when something good happens, it's because God made it happen. And same thing happens when Leninists try to be apologists for the USSR. When something bad happens, it's because of extenuating circumstances that were beyond the party's control. When something good happens, it's because the party made it happen. That's not true at all. The party made bad things happen deliberately many times. Nobody forced the material conditions did not force the party to recriminalize homosexuality, for example, which is what Stalin did. And they say, and they have the, and again, when presented with that point, a few Leninists actually had the balls to say, "Oh, he didn't technically recriminalize the, he didn't technically recriminalize the homosexuality. He just did something different that, in practice, just I mean, they shut up. The Soviet Union was pro-LGBTQ."
Yeah. It's one of those things I've always found fascinating about Marxist-Leninists, Marxist-Leninists, Maoists, all of those people, is how many of them are queer folk who are like, yeah, I'm totally on board. And you're like, I don't think you know the history.
I mean, it's not just the. I mean, yeah, there are a few. There are LGBTQ Marxist-Leninists, sure, but but really most LGBTQ people I know are either left communists, anarcho-communists, or some other flavor of libertarian socialists, and some are individualist anarchists like egoists. I know I know zero Marxist-Leninists queer people, and there's a good reason for that, and that's because contemporary Marxist-Leninist parties tend to be very either homophobic or outright or transphobic or both.
I knew a trans woman who was a MLM.
Yes, and did you have any opinion on the fact that so many Marxist-Leninists tend to be homophobic and transphobic?
No, she seemed to just explain to me why North Korea was good, actually.
Oh, fuck me, no. Why? Why would anyone defend that? Real life Oceania is beyond me. North Korea isn't a socialist state. North Korea is a hereditary monarchy that's too pretentious to call itself that way.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's what it is. It's an absolutist monarchy at this point, ruled by the monarchist Kim dynasty, of which Kim Jong-un is the third absolute monarch of North Korea.
Yep.
But no,
It's
they
trash.
keep yeah, but no, they keep contriving ways to make it so, oh, the North Korea is a democracy. No, it's not.
Yeah,
Don't
they don't
bullshit
have
me,
any
please.
people, so it's good, actually. And you're like, yeah, they don't have any homeless people, but they also don't have any, like, they don't take aid. They don't take anything, and they arrest their people. I mean, come on. If if the feudal system didn't have any homeless people, you wouldn't say it was a good thing. You'd still say it was trash garbage.
Yeah. But and yeah, that's another problem that Marxist-Leninists have, which is that they have this incredibly childish black and white view of geopolitics, where you have good nations and you have bad nations, and the United States is the chief of the bad nations. So therefore, any nation that opposes the United States is automatically a good nation, regardless of what its actual ideology and politics and political structure and who controls the states. That's how you end up with them defending nations like Russia, Syria, uh, Iran, uh, North Korea, obviously. China. You end up with you end up with them defending nations that are by no means socialist, not even in aesthetics. They're just not. They're very much anti-socialist, anti-communist. I don't understand how a Marxist-Leninist can ever defend nations like Iran, which is again a right-wing theocratic dictatorship. But again, it opposes the foreign policy interests of the United States. So therefore, it's a good nation. Again, it's the enemy of my enemy is my friend, even though that's not how it works in real life.
Yeah.
In real life, we had no.
I was gonna say, occasionally it works that way, but it's not every time.
I mean, sometimes yes, but sometimes you can ally with someone who doesn't ideologically align with you. But this is like what if? But again, this is like if the Soviet Union. If this is like if the Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact held true and Stalin and Hitler declared war on the Western Allies instead, together. That's pretty much what this is.
I've never understood why.
By the way, you sound a little further away from your microphone than you did earlier.
Sorry, is that better?
Yeah, it is better. Yep. So you were saying?
I've never understood why people are. So, I was talking with somebody about TERFs. We'll bring it back. Don't worry. I'm not just going off about TERFs.
I mean, it's related to Marxist-Leninist transphobia, so I think it works. So yeah.
So we came to the conclusion that part of the problem with TERFs is that they are actually genuinely and confusingly anti-men. Right? Feminism in general is not anti-men.
No, it isn't. Yeah.
But there is this small sect of people who are somehow anti-man. Right?
I mean, I guess so, yeah. Those people are very much a tiny and very black sheep minority of feminists that the right wing loves to pretend are somehow representative of feminism as a whole.
Yeah,
because that way,
and also like to work with them against people. They're like, yeah, this is feminism, but also, why don't you guys and us work together? And they're like, sounds good. Anyway, so
yeah,
you have this group of people who have such a black and white view of gender and sex and the view thereof that they will be anti trans women because they think trans women are men and they think they're evil. And it reminds me of how Marxist-Leninists view the West. They are so anti the West that they will ally with dictators and terrible people who are anti the West, even if those people are not quote unquote good people. Do you see what I'm saying? Like how TERFs will align with right-wing folk. They will align with dictators and capitalists as long as they're not West.
Yeah, it's a stupid suggestion, and it pretty much accomplishes nothing because they keep saying critical support for such and such nation against American imperialism, and I'm like, critical support doesn't do shit. The CIA isn't going to magically not back a coup in the nation you're critically supporting because you're critically supporting it. You want to prevent you want to prevent America from intervening in foreign conflicts. If you live in America and you're a member of an American Marxist-Leninist party, what you should do is get your Marxist-Leninist party to organize general strikes. That's what you should be doing. But no, because again, what I've noticed is that most of the actual organization for any sort of direct action doesn't come from Marxist-Leninist parties. It comes from instead anarchists and democratic socialists and various other political groups that aren't structured in a completely backwards way, which leads to a slow, unresponsive bureaucracy making all the decisions for everyone else. Because yeah, Marxist-Leninism is becoming popular. It is becoming somewhat more popular again. Again, at least that's what. Again, apparently, the Communist Party of the United States is slowly gaining more and more members as of late, but so is the Democratic Socialists of America. So it's not like they exclusively get most of the new converts to the far left. So yeah, as I was saying, but again, I don't see how this increase in membership is going to translate into SIPUSA becoming any less of a completely impotent political entity, because again, they don't actually seem to be interested in doing anything. They don't stand. They're not an electoralist party, which means they don't stand candidates for office anymore. They kind of stopped nominating Gus Hall for president in the '80s, and they kind of gave up. And they kind of gave up trying to take half-assed pot shots at the White House since then. But since then, what exactly have they been doing aside from nothing at all? Because again, most of Marxist-Leninist political party agitation is structured around basically getting us more people to join the party. Not actual direct action, just get more people to join the party. And the end result is this revolving door of party members where they join, they get recruited into getting more people into these initiatives to get more people to join. They get burned out from all the activism because they don't actually seem to be accomplishing anything of meaning. They get disillusioned with the fact that they have no control over the party's central committee because the central committee calls all the shots, and then they leave, and someone else replaces them. It's kind of like a pyramid scheme, like a Ponzi scheme, where instead of conning new investors with the money you got from old investors, you're basically conning new members with the old members.
Yeah, that's kind of tiring. I can see why that has a revolving door.
Yeah, that's why Leninist political parties don't get any bigger than they have a soft ceiling of how much membership they can have by the very nature of the way they're structured. And again, there's a reason why the biggest third parties in America are not structured the way vanguardist parties are. They're the Libertarian Party, the Green Party, and the Constitution Party, and all three of them are much more populist than the actual working class political party of America is. Even though Libertarian Party is complete trash fire and the Green Party isn't much better than the Democrats. And really, why the fuck did the Greens nominate a anti-vaxxer liberal soccer mom for president twice in a row is beyond me. Because that's who Jill Stein is, to be honest.
Oh, Jill Stein, yeah, I forgot about her.
Yeah, she sucks. Yeah, this year they actually nominated an actual socialist, which is surprising, but...
What'd you say?
Yeah, the Green Party nominated an actual socialist for president this year, Howie Hawkins. In fact, Hawkins actually wanted Sanders to replace him on the Green Party ticket, but Bernie said no for some reason. I don't know, but I'm pretty sure Hawkins. But again, if Hawkins runs a decent enough campaign, he might actually push the Green Party above the 5% threshold. Maybe, because Biden seems content to alienate as much left-wing voters as possible. So who knows?
Yeah. It's always fun. I remember reading about one of the parties that was, maybe it was that party on the American ticket, and I was like, oh, I'm not against voting for a commie. And then I read that they were like, and we also think that the USSR was good and China is good, and I was like, God damn it.
Yeah, that's going to alienate pretty much a solid 90% of the population. No matter how you frame it or how you say it, you've lost the argument, I'm afraid. On the argument of whether or not the USSR or Maoist China or Castro's Cuba or any other nation on earth was good, that's not an argument you can ever win with a liberal. It's not possible. You can win it with like 1 out of every 10 liberals, but that's as far as you're gonna go. Because most left-leaning individuals, they don't want to live in the USSR. They want to live in something that's better than the USSR. So when you say, oh, we don't think the USSR was half bad, they're going to be like, so if we vote for you, are you just going to recreate the USSR? Because we don't want that. And they're never going to get that, and they're never going to want that because that's not good enough. And the reason why it's not good enough is because the USSR doesn't exist anymore, and Maoist China is now just a capitalist dystopia in red paint. And I absolutely despise this idea that you have to keep insisting that the USSR was anything other than a trash fire with a few redeeming elements to it.
Yeah, I think going back, because I was digesting some of the things you've been saying, I think going back to the thing about alienation a while ago, I think the problem is that people. So I've had this thing where I have forgotten that, like, political views are not just left wing and right wing in the way that they are. There's also like shapes of them, right? There are people who are like more about dictatorship stuff, even if they are pro LGBT or pro, like ethnic equality, right? And there are
Yep.
people who are less dictatorial, even if they are, you know what I mean? So you can get like libertarianism, right wing and left wing.
Yes.
Right. And I always forget that. And one of the things I was thinking is that one of the problems with a lot of uh, sorry, somebody sent me a bad pun. Anyway, right. So I think one of the things that people forget about, trying to overthrow capitalism is that you can't just have everybody still be in an industrial setting and expect that to be chill.
Yeah, it's this very much a mission accomplished kind of premature celebration aspect to communist rule. Like, oh, we're now in charge, so therefore it's all good enough now.
Yeah.
That's why Stalin pretty much kind of tried to redefine socialism to mean the state capitalist economy of the USSR, because he just wanted to create this illusion that socialism had been achieved rather than the fact that it was basically just a capitalist the government was basically just one giant capitalist corporation with the Politburo as its board of directors, pretty much. And the various and every single workplace was just a subsidiary to it that's still ultimately subservient to it.
Yeah. Yeah, yes. I concur.
And yeah, this kind of mentality is not something that can, and really, you can't just sustain this idea that things are good, things are good, things are good indefinitely, because things are demonstrably not as good as
not
they
only
should
can
be.
it not sustain that things are good. Yeah. And on top of that, things need to change and adapt. The world is not stagnant.
Yeah. But the USSR kept stagnating because the same people that were in charge of it 20 years ago are still in charge of it now. And their handpicked successors think exactly like them because that's the way vanguardism works. It requires favoritism and nepotism in order to function the way it does. So yeah, basically the rulers are the same as they were 20 years ago, 30 years ago, 50 years ago. And eventually you got to this point in the 80s where they all started dropping like flies in rapid succession. Like first Brezhnev died, then Andropov died like less than 2 years after him. Then his successor, let me Google him. Let me just see who succeeded him as general secretary. Konstantin Chernenko. For some reason, I can never remember that guy. I've memorized the names of every single leader of the Soviet Union except Chernenko, and it's because he is complete non-entity when it comes in terms of Soviet rulers. Mostly because he only ruled for exactly 1 year, from February 1984 to March 1985, when he died of cause of death, heart failure, because he was an old fart. He was 73 years old. For fuck's sake, he was alive when the October Revolution happened. That's how old he was in the 80s. And basically you had Brezhnev die. Then you had Andropov die 2 years later, and then Brezhnev died in 1982, November 10th, from heart attack, because he was old, 75 years old. Then Andropov died on February 9th, 1984, of, drumroll please, kidney failure, because he was also getting old, 69 years old. Then Chernenko died of the aforementioned heart failure at the age of 73. And again, I can only imagine how the average Russian was feeling, waking up one morning and reading in the newspaper that, oh, Chernenko died. He's like, what? Again? How many old people? Seriously, how many old people are in the Politburo? At this point, the Kremlin's like a fucking old man's home, probably. At least that's what I would think if that's what I read in the paper that morning. And again, you have a bunch of out-of-touch old geezers who don't actually care about the working people because they haven't had an honest day of work in probably 3 decades at the point in which they died. So of course this alienation is going to happen. And of course people are going to be like, maybe capitalism is better. Maybe if communism died tomorrow, I wouldn't give a shit. And that's pretty much what happened 5 years later, when Gorbachev got his hands on the economy and completely mismanaged it down a cliff, and they just didn't give a shit. The Russians simply didn't give a shit. They stopped giving a shit because they were given no reason to give a damn about anything that was going on. There was no reason for them to get educated about politics because, again, they don't make the decisions. The Politburo makes the decisions. Their job is to just vote every 5 years or so for the one hand-picked candidate that they're allowed to vote for. That's their job. That's the extent of their political participation. Or if they want to participate a little bit more, they can join the party and get dragged into endless meetings where they barely have any say in what goes on in the inner workings of the party. Because again, democratic centralism means you're not allowed to cast dissenting votes once a decision is made. Who decides when the decision is made? Well, that would be the Central Committee, of course. So if the Central Committee de facto makes all the decisions because it decides when the debate is over. Not only that, but Gorbachev, he was definitely a closeted liberal.
Hello?
And
I'm still here, by the way.
Yes, sorry. If I started ranting a bit too much, I'm sorry. But yeah,
No, it's
Gorbachev.
fine. I just wanted to make sure that you knew that I was still here.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I was. Yeah. I'm sure you're still. Yeah. So yeah, Gorbachev, ideologically, he initially adhered to Marxist-Leninism, although by the early 90s he had moved towards social democracy. I wonder why. Because you are a closeted capitalist, you, Michael. That's what you are. You are a closeted capitalist. That's who you are when you became General Secretary of the Communist Party of the Soviet Union, and that's what you are right now, at the ripe old age of 89. Well, congratulations, you lived longer than Brezhnev, Chernenko, and Andropov, so yes, you had better health than those old geezers, I suppose. I probably shouldn't use the word geezer. I think it's kind of offensive against old people, I think. Maybe.
I don't know. I mean, I've used geezer, but I use it as a term of endearment.
Yeah, he's the old geezer, not he's the old geezer, he sucks. Okay, I'm going to stop using that word now. Yeah, a bunch of old guys who are out of touch and just eat jello in the Kremlin offices all day and make stupid decisions. When I picture the Politburo, what I'm picturing is the High Lords of Terra from What If the Emperor Had a Text-to-Speech Device. Just a bunch of old, out of touch, senile people who have no idea what's going on. That's what I'm picturing, and that's not a good look. But again, the reason why those people were in charge of the USSR is because, again, they keep rigging the elections, so they keep getting elected back into office during every single Congress of the party of the Communist Party. Meaning that they're going to remain. Meaning that basically every office in the Soviet Union is pretty much for life. If you got into that office, then you're going to stay in it for as long as you feel like it. Or until someone else decides you've fucked up royally, in which case you're out, like Khrushchev, for example. Oh, and speaking of Khrushchev, another thing about Marxist-Leninists that never ceases to baffle me is how they keep trying to bend over backwards to insist that the USSR was, at least at some point in its existence, a worker democracy, even if at no point it actually was. Are you still there?
Yeah, I'm still here.
Yeah, because you got very silent, but that's okay. So yeah, the USSR, they keep trying to bend over backwards to say, oh, the USSR was a workers' democracy initially, but then it became revisionist when Khrushchev took over, and since then it just sucked, and eventually it collapsed. That's their excuse for why the USSR collapsed. It stopped being a workers' democracy at some unidentified point in its history, and then it just got managed into a cliff by the revisionists. I don't buy that for a second, and because again, I fail to understand how the USSR was any more democratic when Stalin was in charge than when Khrushchev was in charge. And if it was a democracy, then how come Khrushchev inherited the title of general secretary when in practice he pretty much couped it? He seized power through an internal coup. He replaced that rapist Lavrenti Beria as leader of the USSR. That's pretty much what happened. And again, one other thing and again, building off on that, they keep saying that, oh, if only Stalin purged Khrushchev, then maybe things would have been different. And I'm like, no, they wouldn't be different. At best, you would have delayed USSR's demise by maybe a decade or so, but it wouldn't have changed anything in the long term, because Khrushchev not being purged is not the reason why the revisionists took control of the party. The revisionists were always going to take control, because what they call revisionism, I call basically the new ruling class. Just the ones that don't longer have any pretense of giving a shit about the working people. You can argue that Stalin gave a shit, you can argue that Lenin gave a shit, but you can't argue that Khrushchev gave a shit. And as a result, it's a pointless gesture to defend the USSR, because either way, the USSR sucked. Either Stalin sucked or Khrushchev sucked. Either the secret speech was bullshit or it's all true. There is no middle ground between the two. Either way, you have to admit that the USSR was run by bad people, and the reason why it was run by bad people is because the people as a whole had no way of telling them to fuck off. Meaning that the USSR wasn't a workers' democracy at any point in its existence, which means that it's not a socialist state. It's a state capitalist state in red paint. That's what it is. And that's why it sucks.
Yeah, I think that is eloquently put, well researched, and I think it's also not the standard take that you hear from a lot of anarchists who are just angry at communists because they have had internet fights with them. It feels like you've really listened and learned and tried to open your mind to some of the ideas, and then also understood the weaknesses.
Yeah, I'm subscribed to a Marxist-Leninist YouTuber that goes by the name of Hakim. And if you, because mostly because when he doesn't actually explicitly try to plug his ideology, he actually does have very good takes on why capitalism sucks. But every time he tries to defend the USSR, it just comes across as pathetic and completely intellectually dishonest. Because basically he made a video called "The Former Communism's Faults." And a more accurate title will be "Former Communism's Mistakes," because that's what he actually talked about. Oh, the regime made this such and such mistake, and that led to bad things happening. But that's not how you define a fault. A fault is a fault with the system, not a mistake that the system made. A fault in the system would be democratic centralism and vanguardism. A fault in the system would be too much control in the hands of too few people and not enough democratic mechanisms by which the people could decide who controls the state. That's how I define a fault. But no, he doesn't define that way. And it's obvious because he wants to obfuscate and basically make it seem like the USSR was better than it was, like it made honest mistakes. There was no actual ideological decay of where the USSR gradually stopped being a revolutionary state and became this bureaucratic monstrosity. No, it's just honest mistakes made by honest actors. The Holodomor is a very sensitive topic, and honestly, I don't know enough about it to comment on it either way. But based on what I know of it, it's basically a case of gross incompetence on the state's part. Especially since Trofim Lysenko, the guy in charge of Soviet agriculture, is basically a pseudo-scientific whack job on par with your average crystals or magic person that you'd find in some random American city. But yeah, basically one example of a fault that Hakim lists about the USSR is, oh, they didn't focus enough on light industry and consumer goods, and that's why people were unhappy. That is true to an extent, but that's not the big reason why people became alienated with the USSR's leadership. It's because they had no control over the state. That's the problem. The problem isn't that they had lack of consumer goods is an issue, okay, but it's an issue I'm pretty sure the Soviet population would have stomached if it was a decision made by them, not a decision made by a group of people that they have no control over. Another fault they listed was, the leadership of the average age of the leaders of the Soviet Union was too old. Was too high. They were too old. Yeah. Why did that happen? Oh yeah, that's right, vanguardism. But he doesn't mention that because he doesn't want to admit that his ideology has any faults to it whatsoever. It only has honest mistakes. No faults. Sorry. That's what pisses me off so much about that. And also, he made a different video called Left Anti-Communism, an Infantile Disorder. 3 guesses as to who he's referring to.
Gee, I wonder.
It's anarchists, of course, and also democratic socialists to a lesser degree.
I don't understand why people think that it is infantile to want freedom. And I don't mean freedom in like freedom. I mean freedom like I genuinely don't understand individuals. Like, I don't understand why I wouldn't want to live in a community with people. Although that said, the place I currently live, I understand it sometimes. But I don't understand why you wouldn't want to protect people from being ruined by. I mean, if you believe in equality, then you believe. I guess they don't believe in equality. I guess they just don't believe in equality.
In a way, they don't, because again, their ideology is inherently authoritarian and inherently hierarchical and elitist. They believe that there is a group of that they believe that there is genuinely a group of people that are inherently better qualified at running society than everyone else, and as a result, those people should be entitled to rule. Again, it's technocracy and red paint. It's not actual socialism, because again, socialism requires socialism is the idea that everyone is indeed equal and everyone is indeed equally capable of running society because they know what because they have the same lived-in experiences of what society is and what it is deficient in. But that's not the worldview of Leninists, which believe that no, there has to be a vanguard of special snowflake professional revolutionaries who somehow know better than everyone else.
My
And those
major
people need to be
problem.
listened to.
My major problem with that is, so I believe that a doctor often knows better than me about medical stuff. On occasion, I think that they don't listen to me when I say it hurts here. They go, yeah, but what about here? Not literally that, but every now and then. So I understand believing that there are people who know more than me. But I don't understand believing that there are people who know more about everything.
Yeah, that's not how it works. That's not how it should work. And really, anarchists don't really, again, as far as I know, and I include that in that. And from my point of view, anarchism doesn't really doesn't really deny the authority of experts as much as it doesn't insist that there is such a thing as a universal expert and knows better than everyone else.
That's right. That's, as far as I'm aware, anarchists believe that there are people who have honed their skills and expertise more than others, but that doesn't make you somehow the arbiter of all truth.
Yeah, and it doesn't entitle you to permanent authority.
Yep.
All authority should be temporary, based on how necessary it is at any given moment. When you try to create a permanent authority, you lay the groundwork for a new ruling class, because that ruling class will have control over the permanent authority and therefore have control over society.
Yeah. And I also think that I don't know if this is true for you, but I also feel that there's a difference between authority and like somebody who's heading a project, right? Like, I feel like authority implies that you don't have how do I explain it? So like, I feel like if I'm doing a project with somebody to clean a house, for example, and somebody is organizing where people go to do what, that's not the same as somebody who is a manager at a job.
No, it isn't. Because one thing I remember, one of my better memories of when I was looking for jobs As part because again, you live in the UK, yes.
Yep.
So So I'm pretty sure you're familiar with the Job Center Plus.
Do 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 do
Yeah,
do.
yeah, you're familiar with those ones. Yeah. When I was on Job Seekers Allowance, they offered me a few courses about how to. Oh my God! In hindsight, it sounds so much worse than it was. How to sell and market myself to employers.
Well, first you get down on the bed.
Oh my God! But yeah, the course itself sounds bad, but in practice, it did teach me a few things that kind of helped me with my confidence. So in a way, it wasn't all bad. And one of those aspects was how to work collectively together. And basically, we had to divide ourselves into teams. And basically, the teachers decided, okay, this person's in charge of this team, this person's in charge of that team. However, the person that was in charge of our team was very timid. She was very shy. She had very little actual confidence and self-esteem. I kind of felt sorry for her.
Yeah.
So she couldn't really direct us in any meaningful way. So she kind of deferred to. So I kind of had to step in and basically say, okay, I suggest we do this. I suggest we do that. And she was like, okay, that sounds good. Just do what this guy says because he seems to know what's going on. And I think that's pretty much how it should go. One person makes the people work collectively. They all toss back and forth suggestions and ideas. They collectively decide what the best course of action should be, and then they implement it together to the best of their ability by deciding, okay, I'm going to do this part. I'm going to do this part. Then the other person's going to say, okay, I'm going to do the other part, and together we collectively self-manage ourselves and we do our job to the best of our ability, and we do good. That's how
Yep.
worker
I think
self-management
it's
works.
Yep. I think it is about time for us to round up.
So yeah, time to do the recap of what we discussed today. Point one, Marxist-Leninism sucks because A, it's not actually responsible for the Russian Revolution. B, it cannot create a new revolution even if it wanted to. C, it is so monumentally sectarian that it can't even cooperate with itself. D, it has such a black and white view of geopolitics that it will back conservative, anti-communist, theocratic dictatorships if it felt like it opposed what it deemed to be the worst nation on the planet, which is the United States. E, its leaders are it structures a state in such a manner that it practically encourages a regression back into capitalism. F, its leaders are all old, out of touch idiots who don't know what they're doing, and yet they insist they're the best people ever. G, just all of the above. It sucks. That's all I have to say about it.
All right. Well, I think that is a good summary. We're going to kick Craig out, and then we're going to talk about Doctor Who.